The vast emptiness of space lit up with the soft blue glow of the Luxury diplomatic vessel as it approached the unknown object. For weeks, their deep space monitoring stations had detected unusual signals, patterns too regular to be natural phenomena, but unlike anything in their extensive database of known civilizations. Chief Science Officer Mirvox adjusted the sensors, her four-fingered hands moving gracefully across the control panel. "Ambassador, I believe we're about to make history," she said, turning to Tylnax, who stood watching the main view screen with all three of his eyes focused intently. "Magnify," Tylnax ordered, his voice calm despite the excitement rippling through his neural pathways. The screen shifted, revealing a massive ship unlike any the Luxury had encountered before. Its design was both elegant and practical, clearly built for the long journey between stars, with massive engines at the rear and a rotating habitat section. Most striking were the weapons systems visible along its hull, defensive in position but unmistakably powerful. "It appears to be a colony vessel," Mirvox said, "but heavily armed for a peaceful mission." Tylnax nodded. "Open communications on all standard frequencies. Let us welcome our new neighbors properly." Aboard the UES Pathfinder, Captain He-Yun was reviewing the latest agricultural reports when the alert sounded. She pushed aside her tablet and hurried to the bridge, her long stride eating up the distance through the ship's main corridor. "Report," she demanded as she entered. Navigation Officer Sunho pointed to the main screen. "Unknown vessel, Captain. Appeared from behind the third moon. It's approaching slowly and broadcasting what seems to be a grating message on multiple frequencies." "First contact," He-Yun whispered, her years of training suddenly feeling inadequate for this moment. "Alert all section heads. Begin first contact protocols immediately." As the crew scrambled to their positions, Commander Ta-One entered the bridge. His face remained carefully neutral, but He-Yun noticed the tightness around his eyes. As head of security, Ta-One had always advocated for caution, sometimes to the point of paranoia. "Captain, I recommend we raise shields as a precaution," he said quietly. He-Yun shook her head. "We'll maintain standard defensive posture. I won't greet a new civilization with our weapons hot." She turned to communications. "Respond to their hail. Let's meet our neighbors." The first visual contact between species happened hours later, after translation algorithms had processed enough language to establish basic communication. The humans stared in fascination at the Luxury. Tall, slender beings with smooth blue-gray skin, three large eyes arranged in a triangle, and graceful limbs that moved with fluid precision. "I am Captain He-Yun of the Earth colony ship Pathfinder," she said, standing tall before the view screen. "We come seeking new worlds and peaceful exchange with other intelligent beings." On screen, the three-eyed being inclined its head slightly. "I am Chief Ambassador Tylnax of the Luxury Confederation. We welcome you to this region of space, though we admit your presence was unexpected." The translation wasn't perfect, but the meaning was clear enough. A cautious but hopeful start. Over the next 3 days, small delegations shuttled between the vessels. The humans marveled at Luxury technology. Their mastery of gravitational fields and energy systems far exceeded Earth's capabilities. The Luxury, meanwhile, were astonished by human adaptability and the ingenuity of their solutions to space travel problems. On the 4th day, Ambassador Tylnax and his advisors were welcomed aboard the Pathfinder. Captain He-Yun personally escorted them through the ship's arboretum, where Earth plants grew in carefully maintained beds. "Your species carries pieces of your homeworld with you," Tylnax observed, his central eye focusing on a blooming cherry tree, while his other eyes scanned the surrounding environment. "This shows both sentiment and practicality." He-Yun smiled. "Both are important for long journeys. These plants provide food, oxygen, and remind us of where we came from." Mirvox, the Luxury science officer, approached a display of Earth's solar system. "Your journey here was remarkable. Our calculations suggest you traveled for nearly 2 decades in suspended animation." 23 years, He-Yun confirmed. The first generation ship from Earth. We carry 10,000 colonists, most still in cryosleep, to be awakened when we find a suitable world. Telnax's eyes widened slightly, a sign of surprise in Loxari body language. Your determination is admirable. The Loxari achieved faster than light travel before considering colonial expansion. The tour continued to the engineering section, where the Loxari examined the massive fusion engines with professional interest, then to the agricultural domes, medical facilities, and finally to the diplomatic reception prepared in their honor. Throughout the tour, Commander Ta-One shadowed the group, his hand never far from his sidearm. He-Yun had insisted the security detail remain minimal and unobtrusive, but she couldn't deny Ta-One all precautions. At the reception, the Loxari carefully sampled human foods compatible with their biology, while humans cautiously tasted Loxari delicacies. Cultural presentations followed, music, art, and basic historical overviews designed to provide context without overwhelming detail. Later that evening, after the Loxari delegation had returned to their ship, Telnax prepared his report for the Loxari Council. The humans are a fascinating paradox, he dictated. Their technology is surprisingly advanced for such a young species. They've mastered nuclear fusion, genetic engineering, and artificial gravity through rotation, all without discovering the principles of phase-shifted matter or neural interface technology. He paused, considering his next words carefully. They are simultaneously primitive and innovative, peaceful in stated intention yet heavily armed. Their ship carries weapons capable of significant damage, though positioned defensively. When questioned, they speak of precautions against the unknown, a concept both prudent and concerning. Mervox added her observations. Their biology is remarkably adaptive. They can survive in a wider range of environmental conditions than any spacefaring species we've encountered. This may explain their success despite technological limitations. Telnax concluded, I recommend continued diplomatic engagement with appropriate safeguards. These humans may become valuable allies or dangerous competitors, depending on how we nurture this relationship. Meanwhile, on the Pathfinder, Captain He-Yun was dealing with internal politics. They're telepathic, Captain, Commander Ta-One insisted, pacing the small conference room where the ship's senior staff had gathered. Their brain structures suggest advanced neural capabilities beyond simple communication. Chief Science Officer Minji shook her head. That's speculation. Their neural pathways are different from ours, yes, but that doesn't automatically mean telepathy. Even if they have empathic abilities, that's no reason to withdraw from diplomatic relations, He-Yun said firmly. The Loxari have been nothing but helpful. They've already shared star charts that will save us years of exploration. Ta-One's expression hardened, and in return, they've mapped our ship, analyzed our weapons, and assessed our capabilities. Captain, I respect your optimism, but my job is security. These aliens could pose an existential threat to our mission. Or they could be the greatest discovery in human history, countered Minji. He-Yun raised her hand for silence. Both perspectives have merit. We'll proceed with diplomacy while maintaining appropriate security protocols. She looked directly at Ta-One. Commander, I understand your concerns, but I won't let fear dictate our first steps into galactic society. The meeting adjourned, but Ta-One lingered. When the others had left, he approached He-Yun with a data tablet. Captain, there's something else you should know. The Loxari occupy 3 star systems in this sector, all rich in resources our colony needs. He displayed scans of nearby planets. If we follow our original mission parameters and establish our colony here, we'll eventually compete with them for those resources. He-Yun studied the data with a frown. That's a problem for future generations to solve through diplomacy. Or we could secure our future now, Ta-One said quietly. A small group of us believe humanity cannot risk dependency on alien goodwill. We need to establish our position of strength immediately. He-Yun's eyes narrowed. What exactly are you suggesting, Commander? Nothing yet, Captain. Just contingency planning. He straightened to attention. With your permission, I'll continue security assessments of our new friends. After he left, Hei-Yun stared at the star chart, showing the Pathfinder's position relative to Luxury territory. Humanity's first steps into the galaxy were supposed to be about new beginnings, not old conflicts. Yet here they were, already calculating advantages and weaknesses. Unknown to both Captain Hei-Yun and Ambassador Tylemax, the seeds of future conflict were already taking root, even as their diplomatic teams planned the next day's cultural exchange. The cultural exchange program began with great excitement on both ships. Small groups from each species spent time learning about the other's customs, technology, and history. The humans were amazed by Luxury art that seemed to shift colors depending on the viewer's emotions. The Luxury were fascinated by human music, which triggered neural responses they had never experienced before. Security Chief Jae-ho watched these exchanges with growing unease. During a private meeting with Captain Hei-Yun, he placed a small device on her desk and activated it. A soft hum filled the room. Anti-surveillance, he explained. We can speak freely now. Hei-Yun frowned. Is this really necessary, Chief? I believe it is, Captain. The Luxury delegation that visited engineering yesterday. I had my team review the security footage. They weren't just looking at our technology. They were studying us. Jae-ho pulled up a video showing a Luxury scientist observing the human engineer's emotional reaction to a question. The alien's three eyes had focused intensely, and its head tilted in a particular way. Their scientists always position themselves to observe emotional responses, not just listen to answers. And our crew reports feeling unusually calm in their presence, even when discussing sensitive topics. Hei-Yun leaned back in her chair. That's hardly evidence of anything sinister. Maybe they're just naturally calming. Or maybe they're influencing our emotional states. Jae-ho lowered his voice. Captain, several crew members have reported unusual dreams since the exchanges began. Dreams featuring places they've never seen, but that match descriptions of Luxury worlds. Dreams aren't evidence, Chief. Maybe not, but this is. He showed her another recording, this time of a Luxury visitor standing near the ship's restricted data terminals. Nothing was accessed that we know of, but their interest in our systems is clear. Across the void on the Luxury vessel, similar concerns were brewing. Science Director Mirvox presented her findings to Ambassador Tylemax. Humans express emotions but then deny feeling them, she explained, displaying neural scans. When researcher Velanir asked about their weapons capabilities, the human engineer showed clear anxiety signatures, but verbally expressed confidence. This pattern of emotional deception is consistent across multiple interactions. Tylemax considered this information. Perhaps their spoken language doesn't align perfectly with their emotional states. Not all species are as integrated as we are. That's possible, but there's more. Mirvox switched to another display. Their emotional responses intensify when we discuss certain topics: resource allocation, defensive capabilities, our governance structure. These reactions suggest hidden agendas, or simple curiosity, Tylemax countered. Remember, this is their first contact with a non-Earth species. Meanwhile, aboard the Pathfinder, industrialist Tuyuns studied the mineral surveys of nearby Luxury-claimed worlds. As head of the colony's Resource Development Division, he was responsible for ensuring the future settlement would have everything needed to thrive. What he saw in the data made his heart race. Rhodium, platinum, rare earth elements, all in concentrations far higher than anything we left behind on Earth, he told his assistant. One asteroid belt in their territory contains enough precious metals to fund our entire colony for centuries. But they've already claimed those systems, his assistant reminded him. Duyun smiled thinly. Claims can be negotiated or challenged. We have 10,000 colonists depending on us to secure their future. The Luxury have 3 star systems. Surely they could spare some resources for their new neighbors. The next day brought the first significant incident. Dr. Yuri, a human anthropologist, was examining a crystalline structure the Loxari had called a memory matrix, a storage device for cultural records. Fascinated by its construction, she had scanned it with a standard analysis tool. The energy from the scanner had disrupted the matrix's delicate structure, causing portions of the stored data to degrade. The Loxari escorts had immediately removed the artifact, their normally calm demeanor visibly disturbed. Though they accepted her profuse apologies, word of the incident spread quickly through both communities. That same day, a Loxari researcher named Kelinar accessed an unsecured terminal in the human medical bay. Though he believed he was browsing public information about human biology, he had accidentally entered a restricted database containing genetic profiles of the colonists. The breach was detected almost immediately, and while Kelinar apologized for the misunderstanding, Security Chief Jiho saw it as confirmation of his suspicions. First they damage our equipment with their scans, then they access our genetic data, Jiho reported to a small group of security officers. They claim it was an accident, but I'm not convinced. They can sense our emotions. How do we know they can't control our thoughts? Make us see accidents where there's actually deliberate action. One officer looked uncomfortable. Isn't that a bit extreme, Chief? They've been nothing but helpful. That's how infiltration works, Jiho insisted. They gain trust before exploiting it. I'm implementing new protocols. No Loxari visitors are to be left unescorted at any time. All sensitive systems require dual authentication, and I want Psi-wave monitors installed in all meeting areas. Psi-wave monitors, but those are experimental. They're our best defense against mental manipulation, Jiho cut in. Better to be cautious than compromised. In the Loxari Council chamber, a heated debate was unfolding about the humans. They damaged a third-generation memory matrix, centuries of cultural history potentially lost. Senior Curator Pavlox exclaimed, and they show no reverence for the knowledge it contained. They view our artifacts as objects to be analyzed, not treasures to be preserved. Ambassador Tidalnax raised a calming hand. The damage was unintentional. Their scientist was deeply remorseful. Was she? Fleet Commander Kurivex asked. Or did she simply display the emotions she thought would appease us? Their emotions and words often contradict each other. It makes them impossible to fully trust. Not impossible, Mirvox interjected. Just challenging. Their complexity could be valuable to us. They solve problems differently than we do. Or they could be a threat to regional stability, Curvex countered. Their ship carries weapons capable of planetary bombardment. Why would peaceful colonists need such firepower? Tilnax sighed. Perhaps because they left their homeworld without knowing what they might encounter. We should not fault them for being cautious. There's a difference between caution and aggression, Curvex said. Have you noticed how interested they are in our resource-rich systems? Particularly their industrial representative, Du Yun. His emotional patterns show intense acquisitiveness when discussing mining rights. Natural interest for a colonial expedition, Tilnax argued. They need resources to establish themselves. Or they covet what we already possess, Curvex said darkly. Back on the Pathfinder, Captain He Yun faced mounting pressure from both sides. Jiho's security concerns were growing more insistent, while Du Yun pushed for aggressive resource negotiations with the Loxari. We need to establish clear territorial rights before proceeding with any further cultural exchanges, Du Yun argued during a leadership meeting. The Loxari have more systems than they can effectively utilize. We should negotiate for mining rights at minimum. And my team should screen all information before it's shared, Jiho added. The incident with our genetic database proves they're gathering intelligence on us. He-Yun rubbed her temples, feeling a headache forming. We're guests in their territory. Making demands would be poor diplomacy. With respect, Captain, we're not guests. We're potential competitors, Du Yun said smoothly. The Loxari need to understand that humans aren't just passing through. We're here to stay, and we require certain accommodations. That evening, Hei-yun met privately with Ambassador Tylnax, hoping to smooth over the growing tensions. "I want to apologize again for the incidents," she said as they walked through the Pathfinder's Arboretum. "Some of my crew are still adjusting to the idea of sharing space with another intelligent species." Tylnax's three eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture Hei-yun had learned indicated thoughtfulness. "No apology needed, Captain. Misunderstandings are inevitable when different beings meet. The Luxury had our own adjustment period when we first encountered the Vraltic centuries ago." Hei-yun paused. "You've met other species. You never mentioned that, did we not?" Tylnax seemed surprised. "I thought it was covered in our historical overview. The Luxury Confederation includes 3 other species besides our own, though we are the founding members." This new information sent a chill through Hei-yun. The Luxury weren't just a single species, but an alliance of multiple civilizations. Humanity had even more to learn, and potentially more to fear, than she had realized. As they continued their walk, neither leader was aware that both Jai-ho and Kurivex had stationed observers to monitor their interaction, each side increasingly convinced that the other could not be fully trusted. What had begun as a hopeful first contact was slowly transforming into something more complicated. A dance of diplomacy shadowed by suspicion, where each misunderstanding added weight to the growing burden of mistrust between species who could not truly read each other's intentions. The gray, dusty surface of the moon stretched out beneath a starry sky, unmarked except for the gleaming new structures of the joint mining facility. Named Harmony Point in an optimistic gesture, the base represented the first cooperative venture between humans and Luxury, a test of whether the two species could work together despite growing tensions. Harvester drones moved methodically across the surface, collecting mineral samples and returning them to the processing center. Inside the main habitat dome, human and Luxury workers monitored operations side by side, though the easy camaraderie both governments had hoped for remained elusive. Hyun-ki adjusted his environment suit as he stepped through the airlock into the processing center. As operations manager, he had access to every part of the facility, a position Du-yoon had carefully arranged months earlier. The joint mining venture had been easy to infiltrate. Du-yoon's resources and influence had secured key positions for his most loyal supporters. Survey Team 3 has returned with new samples, reported a Yum technician. Initial analysis shows high concentrations of rare minerals in Sector 7. "Good work," Hyun-ki said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Transfer the data to my private terminal. I'll review it personally." As the technician moved away, Hyun-ki's gaze drifted to the Luxury scientists working at the far end of the room. They'd moved with that strange fluid grace that still unsettled many humans, their 3 eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. Were they reading his emotions even now? He forced himself to focus on feelings of professional satisfaction, just as Du-yoon had trained him. Later that night, after most of the station had powered down for the rest cycle, Hyun-ki connected to a secure channel. "The operation proceeds as planned," he reported to Du-yoon's encrypted image. "Mineral surveys confirm what our probes detected. This moon contains more than just rare metals. Section 7 shows energy readings unlike anything in our database." Du-yoon leaned forward, his usually composed face showing rare excitement. "Show me." Hyun-ki transmitted the scan data. The energy signature resembles nothing in Earth sciences. It's like the matter itself stores power somehow. The Luxury are very interested in it, but they're being secretive about why. Have they claimed ownership yet? Not explicitly. They're still analyzing, but I've overheard enough to know they consider it significant. If it's as valuable as I suspect, they won't want to share. Do-yoon's expression hardened. Then we must act before they stake their claim. The Pathfinder was never meant to be a diplomatic mission. It was sent to secure humanity's future. These resources will ensure our colony's success. And the agreement with the Luxury. Legal documents are always open to interpretation. Du Yun said dismissively, especially when dealing with non-human entities who can't possibly understand the nuances of our language. Proceed to Phase 2. The next morning brought excitement as the unusual energy source was officially announced to both teams. The human scientists were amazed by readings that defied conventional physics. The Loxari, however, seemed less surprised than concerned. Senior Loxari researcher Fenvor carefully examined the samples. "This is Xen matter," she explained to the assembled team. "A rare form of matter that exists in a quantum state between dimensions. The Loxari have encountered it before. It must be handled with extreme caution." "What makes it so valuable?" asked one of the human scientists. "A single gram can power a city for a year when properly harnessed, but improper handling can lead to catastrophic quantum cascade failures." Fenvor's 3 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of concern. According to Confederation protocols, any Xen matter deposits must be reported to the Loxari Science Council immediately for proper containment. Hyun Ki stepped forward. "Wait a minute. This was discovered in a joint operation. Any valuable resources are to be shared equally according to Section 12 of our agreement." "This isn't about resources," Fenvor countered. "This is about safety. Xen matter requires specialized containment technology that humans don't possess. So you're claiming exclusive rights based on superior technology?" Hyun Ki asked, allowing an edge to enter his voice. "That sounds suspiciously convenient." The exchange grew heated, with both sides becoming increasingly entrenched in their positions. The humans suspected the Loxari of trying to claim a valuable resource, while the Loxari genuinely feared the consequences of humans mishandling something they didn't understand. Within hours, the dispute had escalated to require intervention from both governments. A special diplomatic meeting was scheduled at Harmony Point for the following day. Captain Hae-yun would represent human interests, while Ambassador Nax would speak for the Loxari. That night, while the station slept, Hyun Ki moved through the dimly lit corridors to the Environmental Control Center. He worked quickly, installing small devices at key junction points in the safety systems. Each device was programmed to trigger when it received his signal, creating a cascade of failures that would appear accidental. "This will accelerate our plans," he reported to Du Yun via secure channel when his work was complete. "When the diplomats arrive tomorrow, we'll have our catalyst." "Excellent," Du Yun replied. "Remember, we need confusion and a clear threat to justify our response. The humans back home must see the Loxari as dangerous if we're to gain support for our more aggressive policies." "And the casualties? Regrettable but necessary sacrifices for humanity's future. Just ensure our key people are clear before detonation." The diplomatic shuttle arrived the next morning. Captain Hae-yun stepped onto the landing pad with a sense of foreboding. The dispute had escalated too quickly, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something else was at work. "Welcome to Harmony Point, Captain." Hyun Ki greeted her with perfect professionalism. "Ambassador Nax arrived an hour ago and is waiting in the conference room." Hae-yun studied him carefully. "I understand you were directly involved in the initial disagreement, Mr. Hyun Ki." "Just trying to protect our interests, Captain." The Loxari were making unilateral claims about a jointly discovered resource. Inside the conference room, Ambassador Nax rose gracefully as Hae-yun entered. Though his face was difficult for humans to read, the set of his shoulders suggested tension. "Captain Hae-yun, I had hoped our next meeting would be under more pleasant circumstances," he said. "As did I, Ambassador. Perhaps we can resolve this misunderstanding quickly." The negotiations began cordially enough, with each side presenting their interpretation of the agreement. The Loxari insisted the issue was safety, not ownership, while the humans questioned why they couldn't be trained to handle the material properly. "The containment technology requires neural interfaces that humans haven't developed," Nax explained. "It's not about withholding knowledge but physical compatibility. Then perhaps a Loxari team could handle containment while humans manage extraction," Hae-yun suggested. "A true partnership." For a moment, It seemed a compromise might be possible. Then Hyun-ki, who had been quietly observing, received a message on his terminal. His eyes widened in what appeared to be genuine shock. "Captain, Ambassador, I apologize for the interruption, but long-range sensors have detected unusual activity near the Pathfinder. It appears several Loxeri vessels have taken up positions around the human ship." "What?" Hei-yun turned to Tidalnax. "Is this true?" The ambassador looked equally surprised. "I've received no notification of fleet movements. Let me contact." He never finished the sentence. With a subtle movement, Hyun-ki activated the signal device in his pocket. Seconds later, the station's lights flickered. Warning alarms began to blare. "Emergency in Section 7. A voice announced over the intercom. Containment breach detected. All personnel evacuate immediately." Chaos erupted as both humans and Loxari rushed to emergency stations. Hei-yun grabbed her communicator. "This is Captain Hei-yun. What exactly is happening?" "The Xen matter sample storage has experienced multiple containment failures," came the panicked reply. "Energy readings are spiking dangerously." Telnax's three eyes widened in alarm. "We must evacuate now." "Xen matter destabilization can." The first explosion rocked the station before he could finish. Walls buckled as emergency bulkheads slammed shut, some trapping workers in sections already filling with radiation. In the confusion, Hyun-ki slipped away to the communication hub. There he transmitted a pre-prepared message. "Loxeri sabotage confirmed. Defending forces engage." Within minutes, what had begun as an accident response turned into something far worse. Hidden weapon systems on human mining ships suddenly activated, targeting Loxari vessels responding to the emergency. The Loxari, caught by surprise, initially believed they were under direct attack. Hei-yun and Tidalnax fought their way to the emergency communication center, desperate to stop what was unfolding. "This is Captain Hei-yun of the UES Pathfinder to all human vessels. Cease fire immediately. This is an unauthorized action. Loxari fleet, hold defensive positions only." Tidalnax transmitted. "Do not return fire. This is a misunderstanding." But in the chaos of explosion, evacuation, and the first shots of combat, their voices were lost. Emergency systems failed one by one, each failure carefully planned by Hyun-ki to maximize confusion and prevent effective communication. As rescue shuttles carried survivors away from the dying station, they witnessed the first battle between humans and Loxari erupting in the space around them, a conflict engineered by those who saw more opportunity in war than in peace. The grand chamber of the Loxari High Council glowed with soft blue light as 27 senior representatives gathered in emergency session. Ambassador Tidalnax stood at the center, still wearing the environment suit he had escaped in, patches of it scorched from the explosion. 17 Loxari dead, 3 of our vessels damaged, and clear evidence the humans fired first. Elder Kivnar summarized, her 3 eyes narrowed in anger. "The mining facility's recordings show weapon systems activating on human ships before our rescue vessels even arrived. The attack appears coordinated," Fleet Commander Kirivex added. "Not the actions of a few rogues, but a planned military operation." Tidalnax raised his hands for attention. "I was there. I spoke with Captain Hei-yun moments before the explosion. She was genuinely seeking compromise." "Then she is either complicit or a figurehead, with no real authority," Kirivex countered. "Either way, the humans have proven themselves dangerous and duplicitous." The debate raged for hours before reaching its inevitable conclusion. The High Council voted unanimously. Humans were declared unwelcome in Loxari space until justice was served for the attack. All diplomatic channels would remain open for one purpose only: to demand the surrender of those responsible for trial under Confederation law. Aboard the Pathfinder, a similar meeting unfolded with far different results. Du Yum stood confidently before the ship's leadership council, his expression solemn yet determined. "The Loxari attacked our mining operation because they wanted exclusive control of a powerful energy source," he declared. When their sabotage was discovered, they responded with overwhelming force. Only the quick action of our security vessels prevented greater loss of life. Captain He-yun stared at him in disbelief. That's not what happened. I was there when the explosions began, before any luxury ships approached. With respect, Captain, you were in negotiations when the attack started. The sensor logs clearly show luxury energy signatures interfering with our containment systems. Du-Yun displayed data that He-yun knew must be fabricated, yet appeared convincing. Security Chief Jae-ho studied the information with a deepening frown. Something about the timing didn't match his own team's reports, but before he could speak, Du-Yun continued. The Luxury High Council has already condemned us and demanded we surrender our people for trial in their courts. They've shown their true intentions. The council meeting ended with a formal response to the Luxury. The human colony disavowed any deliberate attack but refused to surrender Du-Yun or anyone else for trial in an alien court system they neither understood nor recognized. As the crisis deepened, Du-Yun moved quickly to consolidate power. With the support of several council members and many colonists now frightened of alien retaliation, he proposed and passed emergency measures for the duration of the crisis. Captain He-yun found her authority increasingly limited to the operation of the Pathfinder itself, while colony governance fell under Du-Yun's emergency committee. 3 days after the disaster, He-yun worked late in her quarters, reviewing security footage that Jae-ho had quietly provided. The images were fragmentary. Many systems had conveniently failed during the attack, but what she saw confirmed her worst suspicions. Hyun-ki had accessed environmental controls hours before the explosion. Other Du-Yun loyalists had armed mining vessels in advance. A soft knock interrupted her. Jae-ho entered, his face tight with controlled anger. "It's worse than we thought," he said quietly. "Du-Yun's people are dismantling the communication array that links us to Earth. He claims it's for repairs, but my sources say they're installing filters to control what messages get through." He-yun nodded grimly. "He's isolating us to maintain control of the narrative. Without direct contact with Earth, he can tell them whatever version of events supports his goals. Which are territory, resources, power." He-yun gestured to the star charts on her wall. "The Luxury control systems rich in everything we need. Du-Yun believes humans deserve those resources more than aliens do." Jae-ho sat heavily in the chair across from her. "I've been a fool. I was so concerned about Luxury mental abilities that I never questioned what our own people might be capable of." He looked up, determination replacing regret. "What can we do? We need to get the truth to both sides." He-yun lowered her voice further. "And I may have found a way to contact Ambassador Tylnax." Across the void, in a secure chamber aboard the Luxury diplomatic vessel, Tylnax faced similar challenges. The High Council had placed Fleet Commander Kurvex in charge of all human-related matters, effectively sidelining the ambassador. "Your approach failed," Elder Kivnar told him bluntly via secure transmission. "You sought understanding with beings who planned violence all along." "Not all humans supported this attack," Tylnax insisted. "Captain He-yun was as surprised as I was." "Yet she allows the true culprits to remain free," Kurvex cut in. "My fleet is gathering, Ambassador. The humans must learn the consequences of attacking the Confederation." After the transmission ended, Tylnax turned to his aide Velener. "They're preparing for war against an enemy they don't understand." "The humans killed our people," Velener reminded him. "Some humans, not all." Tylnax moved to the viewing portal, watching distant stars. "If we respond with overwhelming force, we confirm their worst fears about us. We become the threat they already believe we are. What alternative do we have?" Before Tylnax could answer, a small light blinked on his private communication console, a channel that should have been inactive. When he answered, Captain He-yun's face appeared, the transmission heavily encrypted. "Ambassador, we don't have much time," she said urgently. "I have evidence that the attack was orchestrated by Du-Yun and his followers, not authorized by our government. Tylnax's three eyes widened. Can you transmit this evidence to the High Council? Not directly. Duyun controls our main communication systems now. But if you can get a small vessel to these coordinates, we can transfer the data in person. It was a desperate plan. For it to work, both He-Yun and Tylnax would need to act against the direct orders of their respective governments. Yet both recognized the alternative was worse, a war between species that should be allies, not enemies. The next day, while Duyun addressed the colonists about defensive preparations, He-Yun, Jai-Ho, and a small team of loyal officers prepared a survey shuttle for what was officially a routine patrol of the outer system. Their true destination was a small asteroid where, if all went well, they would meet Tylnax and transfer the evidence of Duyun's treachery. As they prepared to depart, Jai-Ho received an urgent message. Captain, we've been compromised. Duyun's security forces are heading for the launch bay. He-Yun made a split-second decision. Launch now. We'll deal with the consequences later. The shuttle barely cleared the bay when security forces arrived. Aboard the Pathfinder, alarms blared as Duyun watched the unauthorized departure on the main view screen. Shoot them down, he ordered coldly. The weapons officer hesitated. Sir, that's Captain He-Yun's shuttle, who is defying emergency protocols during a crisis. Fire warning shots first if you must, but that shuttle does not leave our space. Meanwhile, in Loxuri territory, Ambassador Tylnax faced his own challenge. His small diplomatic vessel had been quietly preparing to depart when Fleet Commander Kurvex arrived unexpectedly. You're planning something unauthorized, Kurvex stated, not a question but an accusation. Your vessel's systems are active, yet no flight plan has been filed. I'm attempting one last diplomatic contact, Tylnax admitted carefully, before we commit to actions that cannot be undone. The time for diplomacy has passed. Kurvex gestured, and armed Loxuri security officers entered the docking bay. Your diplomatic vessel is being reassigned to fleet operations. You will remain here until further notice. Trapped on both sides, He-Yun and Tylnax could only watch as their desperate attempt to prevent war collapsed. He-Yun's shuttle evaded the first warning shots, but found itself pursued by faster vessels. Tylnax, confined to his quarters, could only send an encrypted message warning He-Yun to abort the meeting. Back on the Pathfinder, Duyun addressed the colony leadership. Captain He-Yun's desertion in our hour of need proves what I suspected. She has been compromised by Loxuri influence. Perhaps their telepathic abilities are more dangerous than we realized. He displayed tactical projections showing Loxuri fleet movements. They're gathering forces for an attack. As of this moment, I am assuming emergency command of all colonial operations. Our survival depends on immediate, decisive action. Most of the leadership accepted this change without protest, their fears of alien attack overriding concerns about proper procedure. Only a few, like Medical Director Dr. Sunmin, dared question Duyun's growing power. What exactly are you planning? She asked. Surely defense doesn't require a complete military takeover. Duyun's smile didn't reach his eyes. Not a takeover, Doctor. A unification of purpose. Humanity must speak with one voice now, a strong voice that the Loxuri will respect. Across the void, Fleet Commander Kurvex rallied the Loxuri defenses. Though the Confederation had technical superiority, they had little practical combat experience. Their weapons were designed for asteroid mining and defense against natural threats, not war with another intelligent species. We must demonstrate our power decisively, Kurvex told his captains. The humans respond to strength. An overwhelming show of force will compel them to surrender the guilty parties without actual combat. Neither side truly wanted war. Both believed they were preventing one through strength. Yet with each passing hour, as He-Yun's shuttle flooded into the darkness with vital evidence, and Tylnax struggled against his confinement, the chances for peace dimmed like distant stars going out one by one. The Loxuri outpost orbiting the gas giant's third moon had always been a peaceful research station. Scientists studied the unusual atmospheric conditions below while maintaining minimal defenses. When their sensors detected approaching vessels, they assumed they were scheduled supply ships. They were wrong. 3 human attack craft dropped out of faster-than-light travel dangerously close to the station. Their unexpected arrival and trajectory confused the Loxeri detection systems, which were designed to track objects following standard navigation protocols. Target their communication array first, Du Yun ordered from the command ship, then power systems. I want them isolated and helpless, not destroyed. The attack was swift and precise. The human vessels moved erratically, using maneuvers no Loxeri pilot would attempt due to the extreme G-forces involved. The station's minimal defenses were overwhelmed within minutes. Du Yun smiled coldly as reports of success came in. Send the boarding teams. Remember, secure their data cores and take prisoners. I want their technology intact. The attack on the outpost was just the beginning. Du Yun had launched similar strikes against 3 other Loxeri facilities, each carefully selected to maximize confusion while minimizing Loxeri casualties. He didn't want a massacre. Not yet. He wanted the Loxeri to fear what humans might do next. News of the attacks reached He-Yun's shuttle as it hid in the shadow of a distant asteroid. She and Ji-Ho had evaded pursuit, but remained cut off from potential allies on both sides. He's forcing a full-scale war, Ji-Ho said grimly as they reviewed the encrypted transmissions. These coordinated strikes will convince the Loxeri that all humans are their enemy. He-Yun studied the tactical display showing Du Yun's forces spreading through the system. He's committed now. There's no going back from this. She turned to her small crew. We have one advantage. Du Yun thinks we're neutralized. He won't expect us to return to the Pathfinder. Return. Ji-Ho looked surprised. That's where his power base is strongest. It's also where the colony's main communication system is located, He-Yun replied. The only way to stop this war is to tell everyone the truth, humans and Loxeri alike. Their plan was audacious. Using the shuttle's small profile and minimal power emissions, they would approach the Pathfinder during shift change, when traffic around the ship was heaviest. Ji-Ho had maintained contact with loyal security officers who would help them board undetected and reach the communication center. Meanwhile, in Loxeri space, Ambassador Tile Nax had managed to escape his confinement with the help of sympathetic staff. When news of the human attacks reached the Confederation capital, the High Council unanimously authorized a full military response. Fleet Commander Kurvex was preparing the largest Loxeri armada ever assembled. The humans have chosen war, Elder Kivnar declared. We shall answer with overwhelming force. Tile Nax pushed through the gathered officials, his normal diplomatic composure replaced by urgent determination. Wait. The humans are not united in this aggression. Captain He-Yun has evidence that this conflict was engineered by a faction led by Du Yun. Convenient claims with no proof. Kurvex dismissed. The human attacks speak for themselves. Then let me join your fleet, Tile Nax insisted. If He-Yun is telling the truth, there may be humans who would stand with us against the aggressors. We could end this with minimal bloodshed. After heated debate, the council agreed to a compromise. Tile Nax could join the fleet, but Kurvex remained in command with full authority to take whatever actions he deemed necessary. As both sides prepared for the coming confrontation, He-Yun's shuttle approached the Pathfinder under minimal power. Security Chief Ji-Ho had coordinated with loyal officers to create a brief window in the patrol pattern, allowing them to dock at an emergency airlock rarely used or monitored. We have 12 minutes before the next security sweep, Ji-Ho warned as they moved through dimly lit maintenance corridors. After that, automated systems will detect our presence. They reached a junction where Dr. Sunmin waited with several trusted medical staff. Half the crew knows something is wrong, she whispered. Du Yun has restricted all external communications and confined anyone who questions his orders to their quarters. We need access to the main communication array, He-Yun said. Can you get us there? Sunmin nodded. Better than that, we can give you a direct broadcast to every terminal on the ship simultaneously. Du Yun won't be able to shut it down quickly. As they moved through the ship using service passageways, He-Yun was struck by how quickly things had changed. Just weeks ago, the Pathfinder had been humanity's proud first step into interstellar society. Now it was the flagship of what might become humanity's first interstellar war. Their plan worked perfectly until the final moment. As they reached the access point to the communication center, an alarm suddenly blared. Intruder alert in Section 7G announced the automated system. Security teams respond. We've been detected, Jai-Ho said grimly, drawing his sidearm. You and Sun Min get to the transmitter. I'll hold them off. The next few minutes became a desperate race. He-Yun and Sun Min worked frantically to upload their evidence and prepare the broadcast, while Jai-Ho and their few allies exchanged fire with Du Yun's security forces in the corridor outside. On the bridge, Du Yun received the alert with cold fury. Captain He-Yun has returned, he told his officers. Lock down all communication systems immediately. Sir, they've already accessed the main array, reported his communications officer. They're broadcasting shipwide. I can't stop it. Throughout the Pathfinder, on every screen and terminal, He-Yun's face appeared. This is Captain He-Yun. What you're about to see is evidence of a conspiracy that has brought us to the brink of an unnecessary war. The broadcast showed security footage of Kanki sabotaging the mining facility, intercepted communications between Du Yun and his agents, and data logs proving that human vessels had fired first on Luxury ships. Du Yun orchestrated these events to seize control of our colony and take Luxury resources by force. He-Yun continued. He does not speak for Earth or humanity. This is not our war. Du Yun's face darkened with rage. Cut all power to communication systems if you have to, but stop that broadcast. But it was too late. The evidence had been seen by too many. Throughout the ship, crew members began to question orders. Some security teams stopped pursuing He-Yun's allies. Others openly refused to follow Du Yun's commands. What began as a small resistance became a full mutiny within hours. Ji-Ho coordinated with security officers still loyal to He-Yun, securing critical systems one by one. Du Yun barricaded himself on the bridge with his most dedicated supporters, but their numbers dwindled as the truth spread. As internal control of the Pathfinder hung in the balance, long-range sensors detected the approach of the Luxury fleet, dozens of vessels far more advanced than anything humans had built. They're here, Jai-Ho reported grimly. And we're still fighting amongst ourselves. He-Yun made a bold decision. Broadcast our evidence on all frequencies, including Luxury channels, and prepare a shuttle. I'm going to meet them directly. Against the protests of her officers, He-Yun took a small shuttle and headed alone toward the approaching Luxury armada. It was a desperate gamble, but she knew symbols mattered now more than ever. Aboard the Luxury command vessel, Fleet Commander Kurovex and Ambassador Tylnax received the human broadcast with very different reactions. It could be deception, Kurovex cautioned, a trick to divide our forces. Or it could be the truth, Tylnax countered. Look, a single shuttle is approaching. No weapons, minimal shields. Captain He-Yun, Kurovex acknowledged, recognizing the pilot. She shows courage, at least. Through a tense exchange of communications, He-Yun explained the situation aboard the Pathfinder, the mutiny against Du Yun, the division among the humans, and most importantly, the truth about who had orchestrated the attacks. As they spoke, the situation on the Pathfinder reached its climax. Du Yun, realizing his plans were collapsing, made one final desperate move. He ordered his remaining loyal forces to prepare the ship's main weapons to fire on the Luxury fleet. If we strike first with everything we have, we can still win, he told his dwindling supporters. The Luxury have never faced real combat. They'll break. But Jai-Ho's security teams reached the weapons control center first, disabling the systems before they could be used. Cornered and defeated, Du Yun and his inner circle attempted to escape using a hidden shuttle, only to find themselves trapped between He Yun's forces and the Loxuri fleet. The final confrontation occurred in open space, near the very coordinates where humans and Loxuri had first encountered each other. Du Yun's shuttle, armed with makeshift weapons, faced off against He Yun's loyalists, while the Loxuri fleet watched. "Stand down," He Yun broadcast to Du Yun. "It's over." "It's never over," Du Yun replied bitterly. "Humans will always need what the Loxuri have. Today, tomorrow, or a century from now, conflict is inevitable." What happened next surprised everyone. Instead of opening fire, Du Yun's shuttle suddenly accelerated directly toward the Loxuri command ship, a suicide attack meant to trigger the very war he had failed to start. The Loxuri vessels, with their superior technology, could have destroyed the shuttle instantly. Instead, they used precisely calibrated energy fields to capture it intact, saving even those who had sought to destroy them. In the aftermath, as Du Yun and his conspirators were taken into custody, Ambassador Tile Nax and Captain He Yun met face to face again. Around them, human and Loxuri crews worked side by side to restore damaged systems and treat the injured from both species. "We now understand that humans are indeed dangerous," Tile Nax told He Yun, his three eyes studying her with new appreciation. "But you've shown us that you're also capable of extraordinary courage when fighting for what's right." He Yun nodded, exhaustion visible in her face but relief in her eyes. "And we've learned that advanced technology doesn't make a species perfect, just different. We both have much to teach each other." In the days that followed, a new agreement was forged. The human colony would proceed as planned, but in a different star system than originally intended. Joint projects would continue, including research into the mysterious Sen matter that had inadvertently sparked the conflict. Most importantly, a permanent council was established with representatives from both species, dedicated to preventing misunderstandings before they could escalate to violence. As He Yun stood on the observation deck of the Pathfinder, watching Loxuri and human ships working together to establish the new colony's first outpost, she reflected on how close they had come to destroying everything. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but for the first time since the crisis began, the future held more promise than threat. Humanity had unleashed its darkest ingenuity in the form of Du Yun's schemes, but also its brightest in the courage of those who had stood against him. The Loxuri had learned that their new neighbors could be dangerous adversaries or valuable allies, depending on which human qualities took precedence. It was a lesson neither species would soon forget.